From what you said, I feel like the British Army don't really recognise sexual crime as sexual crime, which is a huge problem, I imagine. Are you constantly battling their definition of it as opposed to your definition of it, or maybe perhaps civilians' definition of it?
I mean, undoubtedly, society's wider issues with understanding and responses to allegations of serious sexual assaults and rape are common to both civilian and military. That is undoubtedly the case. So the kinds of things I'm seeing are very, very similar to the kinds of things my colleagues are seeing in the civilian world. But what we have in addition to is the fact, sorry, in addition is the fact that women in the military are, of course, already in a very, very stark minority. And it is a hyper masculine environment. And they can't just leave. And every aspect of their life is intertwined. So, your social life, your work life, everything about your life, your family life in the military is much more enmeshed than it is in civilian life. So, when something really serious happens to you in the military, that's when things, it's almost like a dreadful snowball effect very, very quickly. So I think almost all of my clients have had, I would say, reasonably successful long careers where they haven't suffered particular major incidents, and then they suffer a sexual assault, and then very, very quickly every system that is around them just fails. And they are exposed to appalling rape myths, the kinds of really kind of stuff that will be common to all of us, but I think is particularly acute maybe in the armed forces, partly because there's such a disproportionate number of men versus women. Really some fairly unreconstructed attitudes there, which again just feed the sort of rape myths and the narratives. There is a real failure to understand about how victims behave and what victims need, and how different victims may behave and present differently in different ways and at different times. And the systems then that are in place that are supposed to help them, for example, a service complaint system, which is it's not an independent, it's a statutory scheme that they are supposed to, it's like a workplace grievance scheme. They can use that to try and raise concerns about harassment, lack of support, lack of welfare support. They don't work. And the prosecution system, certainly in the military for serious offences like rape, is also not working either. And the kinds of stories that I'm hearing time and time again are very, very similar across the board. But, really multiple changes in staff all the time handling their very, very sensitive traumatic case, lack of experience on the part of the police conducting it, lack of experience on the part of the prosecutors prosecuting the cases, really fairly basic failures in investigation, failures to apply their own policies on how they're supposed to support men and women going through these kinds of processes, so that what routinely seems to happen is that the individual's mental health gets worse and worse and worse, and then they are essentially medically discharged from service.